आप सभी का बहुत बहुत स्वागत है। खास तौर पे हम केंद्रीय राज्य मंत्री श्री राव साहब पाटिल दानवे जी का कि वे अपनी अति व्यस्तताओं के बीच मंत्रालय के आग्रह पर इस कार्यक्रम की गरिमा बढ़ा रहे हैं। और जिस तरह किसी भी कार्यक्रम की शुरुआत में हम हमारे विशिष्ट गण हैं उनको का स्वागत करेंगे। और मैं निवेदन करती हूँ जॉइंट सेक्रेटरी विस्मिता तेज जी से कि वे सैपलिंग प्लांट भेंट करके माननीय मंत्री जी का स्वागत करें। सचिव डॉक्टर अनिल कुमार जैन जी को भी हम प्लांट, सेक्रेटरी कोल, और जिस तरह किसी भी कार्यक्रम की शुरुआत दीप प्रज्वलन से होती है, अब हम माननीय केंद्रीय राज्य मंत्री जी से निवेदन करेंगे कि वे दीप प्रज्वलन कर कार्यक्रम का शुभारंभ करें। भारतीय संस्कृति में दीप प्रज्वलन का महत्व अप्रतिम है। यह ज्ञान का प्रतीक है, यह प्रगति का प्रतीक है।
शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणं आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शत्रुबुद्धि विनाशाय दीपज्योतिर्नमोस्तुते दीपज्योतिर्नमोस्तुते शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणं आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणं आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः।
धन्यवाद सभी विशिष्ट गण का। जैसा कि हम सभी जानते हैं कि भारत सरकार स्वतंत्रता के 75 वर्ष आज़ादी का अमृत महोत्सव मना रही है। ये प्रगतिशील भारत के 75 साल और इसके शानदार इतिहास का महोत्सव है। आत्मनिर्भर भारत की भावना से प्रेरित आज़ादी के अमृत महोत्सव की औपचारिक शुरुआत 12 मार्च 2021 को हुई, जो हमारी स्वतंत्रता की 75वीं वर्षगांठ के लिए 75 सप्ताह तक मनाया जा रहा है। और एक साल बाद 15 अगस्त 2023 को ये पूरा होगा। माननीय प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी अक्सर आज़ादी के अमृत महोत्सव के अपने विजन को साझा करते हैं। माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी इसे स्वतंत्रता की ऊर्जा, नए विचारों और प्रतिज्ञाओं, स्वतंत्रता संघर्ष के योद्धाओं से मिली प्रेरणा के रूप में व्यक्त करते हैं, जिससे सुशासन, शांति और विकास के सपनों को साकार करने के लिए राष्ट्र जागरण के उत्सव का वातावरण बनता है। आज़ादी के अमृत महोत्सव को भारत सरकार के विभिन्न मंत्रालयों, विभागों में विशेष सप्ताह मनाया जा रहा है। यह स्वतंत्रता संग्राम, विचार, आइडियाज एट 75, रिजॉल्व्स, संकल्प एट 75, कार्य, एक्शंस एट 75 और उपलब्धियां, अचीवमेंट्स एट 75 के 5 स्तंभों पर केंद्रित है। हमें यह बताते हुए खुशी हो रही है कि 12 मार्च 2021 को माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी द्वारा प्रारंभ किए गए आज़ादी के अमृत महोत्सव समारोह को पूरे देश में बड़े उत्साह के साथ मनाया जा रहा है। कोविड-19 से संबंधित चुनौतियों के बावजूद कोयला सार्वजनिक उपक्रमों ने आज़ादी के अमृत महोत्सव के 5 स्तंभों स्वतंत्रता संग्राम, अचीवमेंट्स एट 75, विचार, आइडियाज एट 75, रिजॉल्व्स, संकल्प, रिजॉल्व्स एट 75 और कार्य, एक्शंस एट 75 को कवर करते हुए आज़ादी के अमृत महोत्सव से संबंधित विभिन्न कार्यक्रम आयोजित किए हैं। इन आयोजनों में अधिकारियों, क्षेत्रीय कार्यालयों और आम लोगों की सक्रिय भागीदारी देखी गई। जनता के बीच इन विचारों को पहुंचाने के लिए सस्टेनेबिलिटी, डाइवर्सिफिकेशन और कॉर्पोरेट सामाजिक दायित्व CSR पर विशेष ध्यान दिया जाए। इस पहल के हिस्से हिस्से के तौर पर कोयला मंत्रालय ने 7 मार्च 2023 से 11 मार्च 2023 तक आज़ादी का अमृत महोत्सव के तहत एक विशेष सप्ताह का आयोजन किया है। इस अवधि के दौरान मंत्रालय द्वारा कुछ खास कार्यक्रमों की एक सीरीज तैयार की गई है। इसके अलावा कोयला सार्वजनिक क्षेत्र के उपक्रम भी देश भर में आज़ादी के अमृत महोत्सव से जुड़े कार्यक्रम आयोजित करेंगे। इन सभी कार्यक्रमों में कोयला क्षेत्र में हमारी यात्रा और आज इसकी प्रासंगिकता के उपलक्ष्य में विभिन्न क्षेत्रों के विशेषज्ञ भी भाग लेंगे। कोयला मंत्रालय आज़ादी के अमृत महोत्सव की भावनाओं को आत्मसात करने में सबसे आगे रहा है। मंत्रालय आज़ादी के अमृत महोत्सव के तहत वर्ष 2023 तक विशेष कार्यक्रमों का आयोजन करने जा रहा है। शहरों से लेकर गांवों तक मौजूद कोयला CPSUs इसमें बढ़ चढ़कर भाग ले रहे हैं और साप्ताहिक आज़ादी का अमृत महोत्सव कार्यक्रम आयोजित कर रहे हैं, जिन्हें सभी डिजिटल प्लेटफॉर्म पर साझा किया जा रहा है। और आपको हम ये भी बता दें कि इस कार्यक्रम को डिजिटल प्लेटफॉर्म्स पर भी जो इस कार्यक्रम को लाइव स्ट्रीम किया जा रहा है, इस कार्यक्रम को देश भर में देखा जा रहा है। यहाँ आयोजित ये कार्यक्रम अलग अलग सोशल मीडिया हैंडल्स के माध्यम से देश भर में लाइव स्ट्रीम हो रहा है। रिकॉर्ड कोयला उत्पादन से लेकर आयात बिलियन लोगों को सशक्त बनाने तक हमारी यात्रा 75 को दर्शाती है। सस्टेनेबल माइनिंग से लेकर कार्बन न्यूट्रल ऑपरेशंस की उपलब्धि तक, खनन क्षेत्रों में रोजगार मुहैया कराने से लेकर स्थानीय समुदायों के जीवन में सामाजिक आर्थिक पहलुओं की रक्षा तक मंत्रालय का संकल्प रिजॉल्व एट 75 दर्शाता है। सिंचाई और घरेलू उपयोग के लिए खदान के पानी की रिसाइकलिंग से लेकर इको माइन टूरिज्म पार्क विकसित करके खदानों को पर्यावरण के अनुकूल बंद करने तक, कोयले से हाइड्रोजन निकालने से लेकर खनन कार्यों में डीजल की खपत को कम करना, ये सभी प्रयास हमारे विचार आइडियाज एट 75 के बारे में बहुत कुछ बताते हैं। 1 बिलियन टन उत्पादन करने से लेकर सौर ऊर्जा में डाइवर्सिफिकेशन तक, खनन नियमों के सरलीकरण से लेकर कमर्शियल माइनिंग वाणिज्यिक खनन शुरू करने तक हम अपने कार्य एक्शन सेट 75 के प्रति प्रतिबद्ध हैं। और अब मैं निवेदन करूंगी डॉक्टर अनिल कुमार जैन सेक्रेटरी से कि वे स्वागत वक्तव्य दें। आइए स्वागत करते हैं डॉक्टर अनिल कुमार जैन सेक्रेटरी।
आदरणीय राज्य मंत्री कोयला, खान एवं रेल मंत्रालय श्री पाटिल जी, आज के कार्यक्रम में कुछ समय बाद अपना एक्सपर्ट उद्बोधन देने के लिए आमंत्रित श्री राकेश कक्कड़, पूर्व सचिव भारत सरकार, यहाँ उपस्थित मंत्रालय के सभी अधिकारी साथीगण और VC के माध्यम से जुड़े हुए अन्य साथियों, यह वर्ष कितना महत्वपूर्ण है इस को पहचानने के लिए हम सब लोग ये सोचते हैं कि प्रधानमंत्री जी ने, देश ने एक पूरे वर्ष भर का कार्यक्रम आयोजित किया आज़ादी का अमृत महोत्सव के नाम से। उसी श्रृंखला में आज ये औपचारिक सेलिब्रेशंस का प्रारंभ किया है आज, और ये कार्यक्रम चलेगा। इसमें हम लोग हमारे मंत्रालय को जो दायित्व दिया हुआ है उसके विषय में अभी तक क्या उपलब्धि प्राप्त की और आने वाले समय के लिए हम लोग क्या संकल्प करते हैं, उसके लिए हम लोग यहाँ सब एकत्रित हुए हैं। मैं आप सभी लोगों का स्वागत करता हूँ। माननीय मंत्री जी दौरे पर थे, उन्होंने इस कार्यक्रम में उपस्थित होने के लिए विशेष तौर से, क्योंकि माननीय मंत्री श्री जोशी आ नहीं पाए किसी ज़रूरी कार्यवश, श्री पाटिल जी ने अपना कार्यक्रम बदला, वो आए, मैं उनका स्वागत करता हूँ। मैं आप सभी लोगों का इस कार्यक्रम में स्वागत करता हूँ। और इस अवसर पर सचिव होने के नाते मैं कुछ दो चार बातें भी आप लोगों से साझा करना चाहता हूँ। जब आज़ादी की चर्चा होती है तो स्वाभाविक है कि एनर्जी इंडिपेंडेंस की भी चर्चा ज़रूर होगी। कुछ वर्ष पहले प्रधानमंत्री जी ने एनर्जी इंडिपेंडेंस के ऊपर विज्ञान भवन में अपने जो उद्बोधन किए थे, उस समय ये कल्पना की गई थी कि शीघ्र ही भारत जो ऊर्जा आयात करता है, जो ऊर्जा हम लोग खपत करते हैं, वो दो प्रकार की होती है, एक कमर्शियल और एक नॉन कमर्शियल। नॉन कमर्शियल स्वाभाविक है, वो है बायोमास इत्यादि, हमारे पशुओं के द्वारा जो अवशेष, वो जिसका व्यापार नहीं होता। जो कमर्शियल सोर्सेज हैं, जो खरीद बिक्री होते हैं, उसका लगभग 40 से 45% भारत अगर सभी कमर्शियल सोर्सेज को इकट्ठा कर लें, जिसमें न्यूक्लियर भी हो, ऑयल, गैस, कोयला, तो इतनी बड़ी मात्रा में हम लोग ऊर्जा इंपोर्ट करते आए हैं। उसमें कोयला भी हम इंपोर्ट करते आए। कोयला हम लोग जितना खपत करते हैं उसका लगभग 1/4 हम लोग आयात करते हैं। तो आज़ादी के अमृत महोत्सव पर हम सब लोगों को ये सोचना चाहिए कि हम लोग किस प्रकार से इस देश को ऊर्जा सुरक्षा या आयात से सुरक्षा छूट हम कैसे दिलवाएंगे। इस विषय पर मैं 2-3 बातें आपसे करना चाहता था कि यह मंत्रालय कम से कम गर्व से यह कह सकता है कि हम लोगों ने देश को ऊर्जा सुरक्षा दिलाने में, एनर्जी इंडिपेंडेंस दिलाने में बहुत महत्वपूर्ण रोल प्ले किया है। और वर्तमान परिस्थितियों में जब आप देख रहे हैं कि विश्व की जितनी भी ऊर्जा की मंडियां हैं, ऑयल की, गैस की, जो गैस $5, $6 उसका यूनिट होता है, मिलियन BTU बिकती आई है, वो $20 तो इस लड़ाई के पहले ही हो चुकी थी, जो रशिया और यूक्रेन की, और इस समय मुझे नहीं मालूम $30 है, क्या भाव है। पिछले 10 सालों में कच्चा तेल अपने सर्वाधिक ऊंचाई $118, $120 पर चल रहा है। और इसी के साथ साथ जो अनिश्चितता बनी है, उसमें कोयले की अंतर्राष्ट्रीय मंडियों में भी एक तरह से आग लग गई है। अभी मैं दौरे पर था तो वहाँ आंध्रा की जेनको ने कोयले को आयात करने के लिए, क्योंकि दक्षिण में थोड़ी कोयले की संकट हो जाता है, क्योंकि हमारी खदानें पूर्व और केंद्र में, केंद्रित सेंट्रल इंडिया में हैं, उन्होंने अपना जो टेंडर निकाला उसमें कोयले का भाव 15,000 रुपये टन आया है, जो कोल इंडिया 1500-1600 रुपये टन बेचता है। तो अंतर्राष्ट्रीय मंडियों में जो स्थिति बनी हुई है, उसमें हम लोग गर्व से इस मंत्रालय में कह सकते हैं कि देश का जो कोयला उत्पादन है, हम सब लोग, प्राइवेट, कमर्शियल माइनर्स, रेलवेज, पावर सेक्टर, कोल इंडिया, सिंगरेनी कोल फील्ड, हम सब लोगों ने मिलकर इस देश को ऊर्जा सुरक्षा दिलाने में एक बहुत बड़ा रोल प्ले किया है। एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी का क्या अभिप्राय होता है, इसके बारे में अलग अलग परिभाषाएं हैं। प्लानिंग कमीशन ने एक इंटीग्रेटेड एनर्जी पॉलिसी रिपोर्ट में ये कहा था कि हम लोग एनर्जी सिक्योर तब होंगे जब ऊर्जा की उपलब्धता देश के हर कोने में, हर समय उचित भाव पर, बिना सप्लाई अवरोध, सप्लाई डिसरप्शंस, और बिना प्राइस शॉक्स के उपलब्ध हो। तो बहुत सारी चीज़ें इसके अंदर शामिल हो जाती हैं। सारे देश में ऊर्जा का होना, ऊर्जा की आपूर्ति में कोई सडन शॉक्स ना होना, उन शॉक्स के माध्यम से जो प्राइसेस ऊपर चली जाती हैं उससे सुरक्षित रहना, और सस्टेनेबल भी एक वर्ड यूज हुआ था, सस्टेनेबल मैनर में। इस मायने में कम से कम कोल इंडिया का जो रोल है, जो 80% अपने उत्पादन का वो पावर सेक्टर को एक नोटिफाइड प्राइस पर निरंतर देते हैं। आज जब बहुत सारे कोयला आयात करने वाले लोग जो बड़े पैमाने पर आयात करते हैं, जैसे चीन, उनके यहाँ एनर्जी की प्राइसेस बढ़ जाने से उनके मैन्युफैक्चर की, उनके एक्सपोर्ट्स की जो कॉम्पिटिटिवनेस है, उस पर बहुत बड़ा ठेस पहुंचा है। मेरा मानना है कि इस साल हमारे देश का जो एक्सपोर्ट है वो काफ़ी ऊंचाई छू रहा है। मेरा मानना है कि उस उपलब्धि में कोल सेक्टर का बहुत बड़ा रोल रहा है, क्योंकि हम लोगों ने जो इस साल इतने बड़े पैमाने पर 10% से अधिक कोयले की आपूर्ति पिछले सालों से बढ़ी है, तो वो एक निरंतर भाव से निरंतर सप्लाई करने में इस सेक्टर का बहुत बड़ा रोल रहा है। जहाँ तक संकल्प लेना और आगे के लिए कैसे चलना है उसका प्रश्न है, आप लोग जो अधिकांशतः कोल मंत्रालय से जुड़े हुए लोग हैं, आप जानते हैं कि मोटे तौर पर कोयला दो प्रकार का होता है, थर्मल और कोकिंग कोल। कोकिंग कोल हमारे देश में प्रचुर मात्रा में उपलब्ध नहीं है, उसमें इंपोर्ट्स बने हुए हैं और आगे चलकर उसमें कुछ आमूल परिवर्तन लाने पड़ेंगे। स्टील कैसे हम बनाते हैं और हम अपने कच्चे को अब कोकिंग कोल का एक्सप्लोरेशन और करें और पैदा करें, उसमें कुछ समय लगेगा। उसमें भी हम लोग बहुत हद तक आत्मनिर्भरता प्राप्त कर सकते हैं। लेकिन जहाँ तक थर्मल कोल का प्रश्न है, जो कि ताप गृहों में, पावर प्लांट्स में यूज़ होता है, उसमें मुझे लगता है कि जो 2015 के बाद कैप्टिव ब्लॉक्स जो हम लोगों ने दिए, अभी 2 साल से कमर्शियल ब्लॉक्स दिए, और कोल इंडिया ने 600 मिलियन टन से 1000 मिलियन टन की जो योजना बनाई है, उसके फलस्वरूप इस साल लगभग पूर्ण नहीं तो थोड़ी सी कमी जो बचेगी, अगले साल हम लोग कम से कम बिजली के लिए जो कोयले की मांग होती है वो पूर्णतः आत्मनिर्भर होने की कोशिश कर सकते हैं। तो ये हम लोग का संकल्प है, ये हम लोग का रोल है। मैं चाहता था कि आप सब लोग जो इस मंत्रालय से जुड़े हुए हैं, ये गर्व से ये एहसास करें। आप लोग जो दिन प्रतिदिन काम करते हैं, चाहे किसी भी शाखा में काम करते हैं, चाहे प्राइवेट सेक्टर से जुड़े हुए लोग जो इस कार्यक्रम में भाग ले रहे हैं, आप सब लोग इस संकल्प को लेकर चलें। और जो 75वें साल में देश को उपलब्धि हासिल करनी थी, अधिकांशतः लक्ष्य जो देश के लिए बनाए जाते हैं कि हम शिक्षित हो जाएंगे, हम संपूर्ण स्वास्थ्य प्राप्त करेंगे, गरीबी का उन्मूलन करेंगे, ये सभी लक्ष्य अपने आप में मीठे नहीं सिद्ध हो सकते जब तक कि पूर्णतः एनर्जी की डिमांड हमारी पूरी ना हो। तो एनर्जी के बिना जीवन अधूरा है और इसमें आप सब लोगों का बहुत बड़ा योगदान है। तो मैं इस बातचीत के साथ आप सब लोगों का स्वागत करता हूं और उम्मीद करता हूं कि अगले 2-3 दिन हम लोग और एक अच्छा संकल्प और आगे का मार्ग प्रशस्त करेंगे। धन्यवाद।
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद डॉक्टर ए.के. जैन, सचिव कोयला मंत्रालय। और इससे पहले कि हम माननीय केंद्रीय राज्य मंत्री कोयला खनन एवं रेल राव साहब पाटिल दानवे जी को वक्तव्य के लिए बुलाएं, हम आपको बताना चाहेंगे कि माननीय केंद्रीय कोयला मंत्री प्रहलाद जोशी जी कुछ अति महत्वपूर्ण प्रशासनिक व्यस्तताओं के चलते आज वर्चुअल माध्यम से हमसे जुड़ रहे हैं और मार्गदर्शन कर रहे हैं। तो आइए सुनते हैं उनका वीडियो संदेश। ऑनरेबल मिनिस्टर फॉर कोल, माइंस एंड पार्लियामेंट्री अफेयर्स श्री प्रहलाद जोशी।
Friends, we have all gathered here to commemorate 75th year of independent India. With the different activities planned for the iconic week, together we celebrate India's culture and achievements. This Mahotsav is dedicated to the citizen participation, and with their contribution we can make it the world's largest Jan Andolan. Friends, Azadi ka Amrit Mahotsav is an unprecedented clarion call by Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji. With the small changes at the local level, this Jan Andolan can help to achieve huge national gains. It has truly set India on incredible journey. As we all know, the greatness of nation is measured by the participation of its citizen. People feel a sense of commitment to their families and activity involved in improving their quality of life. When this emotion is magnified to include the entire nation as one big family, the vision of Ek Bharat, Shrestha Bharat is achieved. Friends, we know that Azadi ka Amrit Mahotsav means inspiration for our independence movement. In the freedom struggle, there were men, women, youth from every corner of the country who sacrificed their lives to liberate India. Taking inspiration from them, we resolved to build an India of their dreams. We are taking India on the path of becoming Vishwa Guru. This historic period where India under the leadership of Prime Minister Shri Modi ji is touching the new heights of progress. We know that India has a rich spiritual consciousness connected with our culture, heritage and traditions. Let us take pride in our rich roots as it will lead us on the path of bright future. With this, I give my best wishes to all participants of various events of this week program. Once again, I dedicate this Mahotsav to you all because you hold the power to build the new India. An India that is confident, an India that is world leader, an India that is self-reliant, an India that is Vishwa Guru, an India that is Atmanirbhar Bharat. Jai Hind. Friends,
तो अब एक बार फिर हम आभार व्यक्त करना चाहेंगे माननीय केंद्रीय राज्य मंत्री श्री राव साहब पाटिल दानवे जी का कि उन्होंने अपनी व्यस्त कार्यक्रम के बीच मंत्रालय के आग्रह पर इस कार्यक्रम की आप गरिमा बढ़ा रहे हैं और इस कार्यक्रम में आप स्वयं हमारे बीच उपस्थित हैं। तो आइए, आप सभी बेसब्री से इंतज़ार कर रहे होंगे कि माननीय राज्य मंत्री आप इस सभा को संबोधित करें। तो आइए ज़ोरदार तालियों के साथ स्वागत करते हैं माननीय केंद्रीय राज्य मंत्री कोयला खनन एवं रेल श्री राव साहब पाटिल दानवे जी।
कोयला मंत्रालय द्वारा आयोजित आज़ादी के अमृत महोत्सव के उद्घाटन समारोह में उपस्थित हमारे कोयला सचिव अनिल कुमार जैन जी, अतिरिक्त सचिव नागराजू जी, अतिरिक्त सचिव कोल विनोद कुमार तिवारी जी, जॉइंट सेक्रेटरी श्रीमती स्मिता तेज, मंच पर उपस्थित अन्य हमारे सहकारी, सभी वरिष्ठगण, देवियों और सज्जनों, आज़ादी का अमृत महोत्सव की यात्रा 12 मार्च 2021 को साबरमती से शुरू हुई और इस महोत्सव को 75 सप्ताह तक मनाया जाएगा और इसका समापन 15 अगस्त 2023 को होगा। कोयला मंत्रालय द्वारा 7 मार्च यानी आज से 11 मार्च 22 तक मनाए जा रहे महोत्सव के इस विशेष सप्ताह में आप सभी का मैं स्वागत करता हूं। इस महोत्सव में मंत्रालय द्वारा अनेक कार्यक्रमों की योजना बनाई गई है जो कोयला क्षेत्र में भारत की सर्वश्रेष्ठ उपलब्धियों को प्रदर्शित करेगी और भविष्य के लिए रोड मैप भी तैयार करेगी। इस महोत्सव में जो भी चर्चा होगी उसमें सस्टेनेबल माइनिंग, आत्मनिर्भर भारत के तहत कोयले के आयात को कम करना और ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा कोयले का उत्पादन करना ताकि इस देश की ज़रूरत को पूरा करने में हम सक्षम हों। कोयला उत्पादन करके ऊर्जा निर्माण करना ये केवल एक ही हमारा उद्देश्य नहीं, इसके साथ साथ पर्यावरण का संतुलन रखना, जिन किसानों की ज़मीन खदानों के लिए ली गई उन किसानों का ख्याल रखना, सोशल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी के तहत जो गांव नए जगह पे बसाए उनकी प्राथमिक सुविधा देना, ये भी हमारी जिम्मेदारी है। आप सब जानते हैं कि कोविड के समय भी कोल इंडिया ने अपने काम में कोई भी कमी होने नहीं दी। रिकॉर्ड ब्रेक 608 मिलियन टन कोल उत्पादन किया है, इसलिए मैं कोल इंडिया का अभिनंदन करता हूँ। आज़ादी के अमृत महोत्सव का उद्देश्य आप सभी जानते हैं। भारत देश के आज़ादी को 75 साल पूरे होने जा रहे हैं, इसलिए इस वर्ष को हम समर्पण वर्ष मानते हैं। यह वर्ष उन लोगों को समर्पित है जिन्होंने भारत की इस विकास यात्रा में अपने देश को यहाँ तक लाने में महत्वपूर्ण भूमिका निभाई है और आज भी प्रधानमंत्री जी के नेतृत्व में नए भारत के सपनों को साकार करने के लिए शक्ति और क्षमता रखते हैं, उन्हें भी यह वर्ष समर्पित है। साथियों, हमारे प्रधानमंत्री जी कहते हैं, अमृतकाल का ये समय सोते हुए सपने देखने का नहीं बल्कि जागरूक होकर अपने संकल्प पूरे करने का है। आने वाले 25 साल परिश्रम की पराकाष्ठा, त्याग तपस्या के 25 वर्ष है। सैकड़ों वर्ष की गुलामी के हमारे समाज में जो गंवाया है, ये 25 वर्ष का कालखंड है, उसे दोबारा प्राप्त करने का है। साथियों, कल अंतर्राष्ट्रीय महिला दिवस भी है, जो इस बार आज़ादी के अमृत महोत्सव के तहत मनाया जाएगा। सामाजिक आर्थिक विकास के लिए उल्लेखनीय कार्य करने वाली महिलाएं सम्मानित की जाएगी। भारतीय स्वतंत्रता संग्राम में जिन महामानवों ने भारत स्वतंत्र करने के लिए कार्य किया, उनको तो हम याद करते ही हैं, लेकिन कुछ महानुभाव ऐसे भी हैं जिनका उल्लेख कहीं नहीं दिखाया गया। उन सभी महानुभावों को इस सप्ताह काल में और आज़ादी के इस वर्ष में हम याद करेंगे, इसलिए भी इस कार्यक्रम का महत्व है। यह उपस्थित कोयला मंत्रालय के सभी पीएसयू के अधिकारी है। मैं अपेक्षा रखूँगा कि यह कार्यक्रम केवल दिल्ली में ही नहीं तो सब पीएसयू के क्षेत्र में भी इसका आयोजन करना ठीक होगा। इस कार्यक्रम में ब्लड डोनेशन कैंप हो, स्कूल में कॉलेजों में जाकर चर्चा सत्र करके आज़ादी का 75 साल का महत्व सभी को दिलाना हो, इस देश का इतिहास बच्चों के सामने रखना हो, ऐसे कई कार्यक्रम हो सकते हैं। यही आप करेंगे ऐसी मेरी अपेक्षा है। आप सभी ने इस कार्यक्रम में भाग लिया और कार्यक्रम की शोभा बढ़ाई, इसलिए मैं आपको सभी को धन्यवाद देता हूँ। धन्यवाद।
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद माननीय मंत्री जी इस मार्गदर्शन के लिए। कोयला मंत्रालय का फोकस आत्मनिर्भर भारत के लिए ऊर्जा सुरक्षा सुनिश्चित करना और सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट के दोहरे लक्ष्यों पर केंद्रित है। हमारी नीतियों का उद्देश्य उत्पादन में वृद्धि के साथ साथ पर्यावरण कार्बन फुटप्रिंट को के हर पहलू को सकारात्मक रूप से प्रभावित करने के साथ साथ स्थानीय समुदायों के सामाजिक और आर्थिक पहलुओं पर अहम कार्य किए गए। इन सभी प्रयासों का मकसद रहा समाज और राष्ट्र निर्माण में सामाजिक दायित्व की दिशा में कोयला कंपनियों ने कुछ खास कदम उठाए हैं। आइए इन इनिशिएटिव्स पर एक नजर डालते हैं। आओ ले संकल्प थामे अमृत महोत्सव की डोर, ले जाएं भारतवर्ष को अमृतकाल की ओर।
Coal India Limited, world's single largest coal producer and India's premier public sector conglomerate. It fuels 65% of nation's electricity generation and is the prime mover of India's industrial growth. With great power and authority come great responsibilities. Meeting its duty of protecting the nature, the company puts great emphasis on operations that are sustainable at all fronts, be it environmental, operational or societal. One of the big steps taken by Coal India is to transform mining into an eco-friendly process. Measures promoting resource efficiency include adoption of new environment-friendly technology, surface miners, truck and trolley mounted fog cannons, mist sprayers, automated sprinklers, mechanical road sweepers, all torch bearers of sustainable mining. First Mile Connectivity or FMC is an integrated, mechanized, efficient and eco-friendly procedure of mass transportation of coal from a mine to the nearest rail connectivity that replaces the conventional truck transport, a source of carbon intensity. The FMC initiative shall reduce 500,000 tons of carbon dioxide emission per annum and save 19 billion rupees annually on diesel consumption. Continuous ambient air quality monitoring stations and online PM10 analyzers have been set up for keeping the air quality in check. Dense buffer zones and wind barrier systems have been created around all our fields to prevent the surrounding areas from pollution. We carry out environmental impact assessment and environment management plan prior to all mining operations. Assessment of habitat and major wildlife species are carried out thoroughly. Our operations result in land reclamation as a process which is concurrent to coal extraction. As we move forward, backfilling of mine voids follows us. In the past 5 years, a total of more than 9 million trees were planted and 500,000 saplings were distributed to local people. Over the next 5 years, company has set a target of planting over 14 million plants at an estimated expenditure of 3.4 billion rupees. CIL is also fast diversifying into the renewable energy sector and is developing 3,000 megawatt solar power projects to be operational at a capital investment of 56 billion rupees. Among various post-mining land usages, CIL has been redeveloping mine-out landfills into sustainable recreation spots. Company has established 24 eco-tourism parks over an area of 226 hectares. By 2025-26, CIL will have developed a total of 35 new eco-parks at an expenditure of 930 million rupees. This is likely to attract more than 500,000 tourists per year. Company envisions creating CO2 sequestration potential of up to 270,000 tons per year by 2025-26. To keep the water quality in check, company operates mine discharge treatment plants and effluent treatment plants. Effective use of mined out water is CIL's strongest sustainability resolve. Mine water is used in mining operations such as water sprinkling and equipment washing.
The underground water is filtered multiple times in this plant.
In 2020-21, out of 610 million cubic meter of mine water discharged, 39% was utilized by the local community, thereby benefiting almost 7.5 lakh people with domestic and irrigation water.
The water is not actually clean as it comes directly from the underground. Here, the water is getting filtered and bottled. Because of Kol Neer plant, people in our village get pure and clean drinking water at their doorstep.
No droplet should go waste is what the company commits for. Sand segregation unit is another innovation undertaken by Coal India. The overburden in most areas contain a high amount of sand. So the sand is segregated and is supplied to government-initiated low-cost housing projects like the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. All corporate social responsibility activities undertaken by CIL are aligned and in tune with United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Coal India and its subsidiaries have spent 5,500 million rupees during 2020-21 to meet their CSR targets. Coal India's subsidiary MCL has built a 100-seat medical college cum 500-bed hospital at Talcher, Orissa at a cost of 5,000 million rupees. 3 high-end magnetic resonance imaging machines have been provided to a medical college cum hospital at Bilaspur.
This machine has been most profitable for the poor people. They are very fortunate to get the latest technology at their disposal without paying any money.
In a unique drive, NCL provided 1,000 electric tricycles to the physically challenged. CIL, with the help of its subsidiaries, provides funding for training and education of sports persons. Subsidiary CCL has promoted a sports academy at Ranchi, Jharkhand, and construction of a 10,000 capacity stadium at Jharsuguda is in progress.
I belong to a poor family. I was skeptical initially, but NCL provided us with everything we needed.
NCL has built a stadium at Singrauli and hosts an annual sports event with the participation of more than 1,500 athletes. These initiatives involve an investment of 500 million rupees. For uplifting health and hygiene of women, sanitary pad plants have been set up. Local people around our mines have been trained to produce sanitary pads from these plants, and sanitary pad vending machines have been installed in schools.
We are professionals who train the women from local villages to manufacture sanitary pads. MCL, in collaboration with BAF, has provided us these amenities. Earlier, we had to buy these from the market. Now, we produce them and earn money too.
Project Ahar Mandal is an initiative to promote natural organic farming among rural households. We aim to make them self-sufficient in terms of sustainable nutritional requirement.
We produce organic food with the help of manures like cow dung. The field is designed like a cartwheel. Cow dung is regularly poured at the center, making the rest of the wheel adequately nutritious for plants.
More than 200 farmers from 10 villages are direct beneficiaries from this project. MCL has also come up with a pioneering project Desi Beej Ghar as a CSR initiative for assisting the marginalized farmers grow, conserve, bank and market indigenous seeds.
This is Kalavati paddy, grown from pure organic seeds. Its leaves, roots and seeds have great medicinal value.
The project is intended to benefit 200 marginalized farmers of Orissa. CIL subsidiary MCL has implemented Project Utthan, comprehensive community development through life growth in quality of life.
We work in 5 major branches. Agro and horticulture is one of them. Basic infrastructure are provided to the local farmers to cultivate wastelands. In half an acre of land, the farmer can grow fruits and vegetables of about 50,000 rupees per year.
With an estimated cost of about 20 crore rupees, the project Utthan has benefited more than 6,000 families till date.
Our livelihood is dependent on agriculture. We neither had toilets nor clean water earlier. MCL has built toilets and installed water pipelines in every household. Our children who live in the city are also happy to come home. Now, we have water in our toilet and kitchen.
Multidisciplinary professionals and skilled workforce are CIL's prime asset. Providing sustainable welfare amenities to its employees finds important place in company's goal tracking list. The company operates 430 dispensaries and hospitals with 4,400 beds. As many as 105 secondary schools are run by the company in coalfield areas. With 0.4 million houses, water supply to 2 million population and 384 workplace canteens, the company is at the forefront in adopting SDG goal of decent work and productive employment. These amenities not only serve company's 0.25 million workforce along with their families as direct beneficiaries, but are also incidental in socio-economic upliftment of 80,000 indirect workforce along with their surrounding community. As India strides Coal India Limited stands firmly committed to adopting sustainable operational practices, clean energy, converting waste into resource, replenishing and increasing the green cover, and most importantly, a growth which is sustainable and inclusive.
NLC India Limited is a leading fossil fuel mining and thermal power generating Navaratna Government of India enterprise, also spreading its wings to tap the renewable energy, namely solar and wind power generation under the Ministry of Coal. Afforestation activities and greenbelt development works are being carried out by NLC India Limited in all the mines in compliance with the commitment made to the Union Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change in accordance with the mine closure plan. Under the afforestation scheme, so far about 2 crore saplings were planted in Neyveli Township and industrial area. The greenery which was after the mining activities by planting various varieties as the den arrests the suspended dust particles emitted from the mines and thermal power stations, it helps in controlling air pollution. In Neyveli open cast mines, the overburden removed during mining operations is refilled in the mine. The dumped soil is unsuitable for cultivation due to its heterogeneous nature, devoid of plant nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and micronutrients. For texture and structure, which are essential. Over the years, these dumps have been converted into agricultural fields by improving in stages to regain the pre-mining fertility using modern techniques. As of now, nearly 2,600 hectares of mined out area was reclaimed, out of which afforestation was carried out in 2,188 hectares of land. Around 27.96 lakhs of trees were planted in the reclaimed overburden dumps of mines in Neyveli. In addition, artificial lakes have been developed in the mined out area as a part of rainwater. As many as 52 number of water bodies in 104 hectares were developed in Neyveli mines. These rainwater harvesting water bodies developed in the overburden dumps of mines serve as bowls for collecting rainwater and also a source of water for afforestation. Ecotourism parks were created near the artificial lake in Mine 1 and Mine 2, along with a mini zoo sheltering various species like rabbits, peacocks, doves, lovebirds, and goose. What climate? Progressed by adopting high-tech of growing vegetables, namely tomato, lady's finger, brinjal, green chilli, lab, cluster bean, etc. in 100 hectares of open fields in the 3 mines of Neyveli. The project affected persons are exclusively engaged in all the afforestation and cultivation projects. NLC India Limited always believes that industrialization without affecting the environment shall give a sustainable growth. The company therefore gives a lot of importance not only for making profits but also for protecting the environment and maintaining the ecological balance.
पहुंचाया कोयला, किया करोड़ों घरों को रोशन, उद्योगों, नौकरियों और सुदूर लोगों का जीवन हुआ गुलशन। हुई सरल अनेकों खनन प्रक्रिया, कोरोना के खिलाफ लड़ाई। शुक्रिया। बनाया कोयला खनन का नया कीर्तिमान, आत्मनिर्भर भारत की ओर हुआ देश गतिमान। और एक अनाउंसमेंट करना है यहाँ कि इस सप्ताह भर चलने वाले इस कार्यक्रम में कई एक्टिविटीज़ ऑर्गेनाइज की हैं, उनमें से ब्लड डोनेशन कैंप भी है। और आपको बता दें कि इस परिसर में ब्लड डोनेशन वैन मौजूद है यहाँ, तो आप में से जो रक्तदान करना चाहें वो वैन तक जाकर ब्लड डोनेशन कर सकते हैं। और अब एक प्रेजेंटेशन के लिए हम आमंत्रित करना चाहेंगे श्री राकेश कक्कर जी को, और उनका मैं इससे पहले परिचय दे दूं। He joined IAS in the year 1977, Tamil Nadu cadre. He retired as Secretary, Ministry for Food Processing Industries in 2013. He worked as Director, India Habitat Center after retiring from government from 2013 to 2018. Some of the recent past assignments been Chairman Committee for Framing Uniform Standard Bidding Guidelines for RE Sector 2020-21, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, Government of India. Member Expert Committee for Revision of Standard Bidding Document and Model Bidding Document from 2015 to 2019, Ministry of Power, Government of India. Member High Powered Committee for Revision of Bidding Document for Coal Mines from 2017 to 2019, Ministry of Coal, Government of India. And he also been member Dispute Resolution Committee, MNRE, Government of India, in the year 2020. Let's welcome राकेश कक्कड़ जी. राकेश कक्कड़ जी एक प्रेजेंटेशन देंगे. और मैं संयुक्त सचिव विस्मिता तेज जी से निवेदन करूंगी कि ये पौधा भेंट कर राकेश कक्कड़ जी का स्वागत करें. बहुत बहुत स्वागत है राकेश कक्कड़ जी आपका इस कार्यक्रम में. और अब हम आपको आमंत्रित करते हैं प्रेजेंटेशन के लिए.
Morning, everyone, respected Minister, Secretary, other officers, colleagues from the government, from the industry. So I'm very happy to be here in your midst and present a few thoughts on this subject. It is, of course, an excellent opportunity when we are celebrating the 75th anniversary of our independence to look forward at what our dreams are for the future and how do we move forward from here. From what few remarks the Secretary made, I can see that the coal sector is in turmoil now, meeting with an unprecedented demand for coal on account of certain systemic factors and, of course, accentuated by the current conditions on account of the problems elsewhere in the world. So if I can few facts, but just ball rolling. Coal, as the Secretary mentioned, it's basically of two kinds. And thermal is the bulk of our production, about 90%. Coal of of coal. Now the divergence between installed capacity and generation is mainly because of the fact that renewables, which are growing in importance, have a much lower generation percentage in terms of their capacity. So one thing that comes out very clearly from the facts which have been with us for a long time is that the coal sector and the electricity sector are heavily dependent on each other. The health of one depends on the health of the other. And as we go forward, we can see how problems in the coal sector impact the power sector and vice versa. Next, please. So situation, what is it that anybody, obviously we would all want the importance of coal to come replaced by cleaner forms, and as you have just night itself is getting into renewable industry, and that's happening all over the world. Fossil fuel companies are getting into renewables also. So there is no harm in dreaming. In fact, we should dream. Just the and come to, but at the same time, we have to keep our feet and make sure that we have a well laid out path. Our slide. Yeah. What are turning the dream into reality? The dream of having a no coal electricity generation. First thing we have to realize is that demand for electricity has been steadily growing at 5 to 6% per annum. This demand, obviously, non-coal options have to grow at a faster rate. Only then can they replace coal. If that doesn't happen, then one way of doing that is to cut down demand itself. Certainly you can reduce demand by energy efficiency measures, and that's a very legitimate policy option. But as we will see shortly, that has not had that impact. Despite all the emphasis on energy efficiency, demand for enough generation, and you are going to rely on demand, then we reduce the demand itself. That is option one. Then we have option two, that renewables actually do grow at a rate much faster than the demand growth, and that is clearly the best alternative. But renewables have a problem, which we all know, and therefore, apart from growing, we also need to gap between the daily flux generation, which are well, this the numbers, but what this does show is that generation has been steadily growing year after year. It is only in the last year, 2021, that there has been a drop in generation, which means demand, and that was because of COVID. But what we do see is that while generation from renewables has grown, so has grown. Just to give you a snapshot, generation from coal was about 5 lakh MUs in 1011, and it went up to 9.5 lakh MUs 2021. Whereas in the core renewables, wind, solar, to about 1,50,000 MUs. So there's been a massive increase in renewables, 300% in the last decade. But demand has grown much faster. Next slide, please. Just to give you a snapshot how dominant coal is. All of you who are struggling with the short-term problems of coal supply, I don't think this needs much emphasis. we all know how dependent electricity generation is on coal. Next slide, please. So to come back to the three options, the first option is of reducing demand through energy efficiency measures. And we do not plan adequately for future generation. We do not bring in our own generation through government sources or encourage the private sector to bring it in, then we will be forced into a situation where the demand will have to be cut involuntarily. Ministry in 1985 to 90, and we used to wonder how the country is going to meet its foreign exchange requirements because we were hardly finding any new oil and gas. All the oil and gas in January, district collector in Madurai, and one of our biggest problems was rationing demand. That is, involuntarily we had to cut our demand. There was an informal rationing of petrol and diesel because the country didn't have enough foreign exchange to meet that demand. So that is not a very happy situation to be in. Fortunately, the country came out of that very quickly. We had the reforms in 91, situation improved, we had enough foreign exchange, and very soon all these rationing methods for oil and oil products, that rationing went away. And I'm sure in the case of coal and coal-based electricity also, we will come through the present problems and we'll come at a more sustainable option. Next, please. Yeah. So this second is the possibility of increasing renewable energy sources. This is quite clearly the most promising options. And there is a great need to accelerate the production of renewable energy. Considerable progress has been made in the last 10 years, but still this is far short of our requirement if we want to reduce our dependence on coal. Next slide, please. So this is the installation story, and the main conclusion that we should draw from this is that although the installation of renewable energy sources has grown, but the maximum that it has grown in a particular year. Can you go on to the next slide, please? This was about 12 gigawatts per annum in the period 16 to 18. As per the latest target for renewable energy sources by 2030, we want to do 500 gigawatts, which means about 60 gigawatts per annum, which means we have to increase our pace of activity by 5 times over the next 8 years. So just to emphasize the huge task before us if we want to achieve this 500. Next, please. The third option is storage. Option 2 and option 3 are actually not alternatives. They are both complementary to each other. If you increase renewables, you will have to increase storage. At present, coal is the major stored energy form because the energy is there stored in coal, and whenever you want, you can take out the coal and you can generate. And that is what is happening today. When the sun goes down and solar generation comes down, the coal-based plants are ramped up. But coal clearly is an imperfect storage option because it can't be ramped up and ramped down that fast. And of course, from the environment point of view, this is not the part of which our dreams are made of. But for the time being, coal will be the swing fuel for storage, and we have to live with that reality. Next, please. The Central Electricity Authority had conducted a study on actually what is likely to happen by 2030. And they built a model and they've built assumptions. And the headline news from that is that between 2020 and 2030, they predict that we need to increase the capacity of coal by about 67,000 megawatts. They have predicted about 27 gigawatts of battery storage, 3,200 of pumped storage, and they have assumed wind and solar of about 420, which, as we've just seen, is a very huge task. This study is obviously a dynamic one, and I do hope that the study will be revised as we progress further and as we have better information on demand. So we may debate the numbers, we may hope that demand doesn't grow that fast, energy efficiency will kick in a bigger way. All those things can happen, and hopefully we'll get a new study. But the broad picture that we need more coal and that coal is here to stay, I think that conclusion is not going to go away. Now, whether we need new coal-based plants or whether we can increase coal-based generation from existing plants, because the plant load factor or the utilization factor is currently below 60%. That is a matter of detail, but whether you produce energy or electricity from coal using the existing plants or you want new plants, the fact is that coal demand will be there for producing electricity in a larger quantity, because of the simple reason that renewables are not growing fast enough to outpace demand. So given this conclusion that the future of the electricity sector is going to be very dependent on coal, maybe the percentage will come down, but in absolute numbers, all the present studies seem to show, and our immediate past experience, that the importance of coal is going to increase. So, next slide, please. The first implication of this conclusion is on the environment. If we have to live with coal, then we obviously have to tackle both the global environment problems and the local environment problems. We have to think of highly efficient new plants with efficiencies of 50% and more. We should aim to retire old plants with lower efficiencies, so that even though coal-based generation is there, but it's coming out of more efficient plants, so that we reduce all kinds of emissions. And for the coal sector, we also need to encourage coal washing, so that this will also help in the management of the environment. Next slide, please. So one important conclusion for washing is the current pricing structure, and we need to review our pricing structure so that clean coal is incentivized. As we go forward, given the commercial mines that have been auctioned, we are going to have three sources of coal supply in the country. One is from the public sector companies, the other is imports, which are already there, and in a few years' time, we are going to get private sector mines. So how are they going to price their coal? That is a question which we will have to answer in the years to come. One good step that the ministry has recently taken is to unify pricing, at least for the auctions. And over a period of time, it would be good if the prices from all the three sources, public, private, and import, there is some degree of parity in them. That is how at least I would like the future to evolve. We have done this in the case of petroleum over a long period of time. For many years, the gap between imported prices and domestic prices was bridged by government subsidies. But now that has almost all gone, and there's hardly any subsidy left in the budget for petroleum. But not only pricing, our price indices also need reform. And one of the things that we should aim at is for the National Coal Index, which started in 2020, if that can replace the WPI. Next slide, please. So this is just a slide to show you how the WPI is totally insensitive to international prices. And that is, of course, a measure of some comfort to us in these days when international prices have gone through the roof. But the fact is that they are not sensitive to international prices, and international prices go up and down, but the WPI is very unresponsive to the international prices. Next slide, please. The National Coal Index, which introduces an element of international prices into the index, and which had been started in April 2020. You can see this graph. It has gone up since most of the last year, and the last reading that I have of December last year, that shows a slight dip after November. But the fact is that the National Coal Index, which includes international prices, and the WPI, which does not, there is a divergence between the two, and hopefully over a period of time we will find a way so that we have only one index in the country. Just as hopefully we'll have one market for coal, we will have one price index also. Next. What are the implications for the industry structure? If the dependence on coal is going to remain, possibly increase in absolute terms, reduce in relative terms, we need to reduce the dependence on CIL. There is too much of a burden on Coal India Limited, and that was the logic for starting commercial mining. And I must compliment the ministry and the industry for very quickly getting this off the ground after all the policy measures were put in place. And what I understand is that about 42 mines, the auction process has been completed. And hopefully in the next few years, we will see these mines producing coal and therefore reducing the dependence on CIL. The other possibility that I saw media reports that there is a possibility of coal mines which are closed to be reopened using the private sector. And we do have a lot of captive mines, some of which are in the private sector, some of which are in the public sector with companies like power companies like NTPC. So can these captive miners be also liberalized so that they become more like commercial miners? Otherwise, having too many parts to the market will create a problem in integrating the market. We still have a large quantity of imports, about 20-25% of our demand is met by imports. And hopefully once all these new initiatives take place, we will be able to reduce imports and thereby make our dependence on imports less. 2 or 3 issues there. One is we need to improve our coal quality. We need to relook at our pricing, and we need to reduce the railway freight. Because the railway freight is one problem in coastal locations. It makes domestic coal not competitive. On this issue, I would also like to make the point that on transmission also, there is a problem because at present renewable energy projects, if they use the interstate system, they are exempt from paying the transmission charges. That regime was to end this year. It has been extended by another 2 years. Now, all this cost is being borne on coal, and this makes coal-based generation also more expensive. So this is also one reform that going forward, that if we are going to depend on coal, these kind of extra burden on the coal industry, these need to be done away with. Next slide, please. Implications for regulation. There was a proposal some years back for a statutory regulator for the coal sector, and as we find that the private sector is likely to play a greater role in the coal industry, I would think that we must introduce a national statutory regulator. We already have the coal controller, and the coal controller and her office can be used as the core of this reform. One objection when I discuss with colleagues in the energy sector is that if you have a regulator, all regulators fix prices, and we'll be going back to the old regime when government used to fix the prices, and that big reform will go back. So I think we can make it very clear, and in fact, if you look at the bill that was introduced, I think it was in 2012 or 13, it does not have any powers for the regulator to fix prices. So that can be fixed in the design of the regulation itself. One of the most important things that the regulator can do is fix the pricing structure so that there is adequate incentive to improve quality without getting into the level of prices. It can hear the disputes between the miners, state governments, and the nominated authority. Those disputes will definitely arise as the mines come under production. And the other important thing the regulator can do is to encourage the formation of a national coal market. Just as on the power side, they are trying to get the merit order dispatch done on a national basis using the power plants all across the country. So in the coal sector also, we should look at moving towards one national coal market. One very important thing which has seemingly nothing to do with the coal sector or the power sector, but I think it has everything to do with both the sectors, is that the financial markets are increasingly running away from coal. And financiers are the most conservative people, and somehow this impression has got around that the world can do without coal, and therefore financing companies are not willing to give finance for coal companies, whether it is mining of coal, production of coal, or utilization of coal. So it is, in my view, very premature for the financing companies to run away from coal, and this will have a very serious impact on our ability to produce enough coal and use enough coal for electricity generation at least, if not for other sectors. So this is one issue where all the stakeholders, the Government of India, state governments, the companies in the public sector, the captive miners, commercial miners, I think it is in everybody's interest to engage with the financial community and make them understand that while it is good to dream about a coal-less future, that is not the reality. And if we don't invest sufficiently in coal production and utilization, at least this country will pay a very heavy price. Next slide, please. So this is where I'll end. In my view, coal is here to stay for decades, not for years. A healthy national coal market will help the coal-based electricity markets. We need to study the other energy sectors, how they have reformed, how they have moved away from breaking up the industry into components, creating barriers between the international markets and the domestic markets. And of course, we need a very healthy power sector. That is a problem that has been with us for decades. I recollect when I was Joint Secretary in the Power Ministry and the regulatory bill in '98 was passed, we all celebrated. We thought this is a path-breaking step, and now the power sector has moved to financial sustainability. The regulators will fix tariffs, ensure that the tariffs are collected, and everything will be hunky-dory. How wrong we were. So it's now quarter of a century since regulators started coming into this country, and the power sector is still in very difficult times. We need a separate session to discuss what is happening in the power sector and what can be done there. But we have to recognize that there's no point producing coal unless the user of that coal is also healthy. So with these words, I would end and thank the Secretary and other organizers for organizing this wonderful event and giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts. Any questions?
क्वेश्चन आंसर अगर कोई ओके
Yeah. Thank you, sir, for a very comprehensive talk on the coal sector. You have touched all the elements that constitute the coal sector, including auctioning methodology, auction process, and the demand of coal in the power sector, and also the price discovery, how to reflect the correct price for coal that is sold in the market, and also talk about having a regulator that would be fair and equitable to all the players in the market. And lastly, you also mentioned about a topic which is also actually the ministry is grappling. How do we persuade the banking industry to finance the operationalization of coal mines? You know, this backlog, the backlash is from the Wall Street, where there is a negative premium on financing of coal mines in the rest of the world. Now, some of the banks, in fact, most of the national banks which are doing the business outside the India, they are very sensitive to finance. But I'm very glad that recently the MOC had a meeting with the Department of Financial Services. Secretary Cole and myself, we had with Secretary DFS and also the bankers. Now, they have agreed to finance, and there are 3 mines which are at advanced stage of financing. So that will be the beginning. That's what we thought. SBI is doing that. That will be the beginning. I think we'll move forward. So with these initial remarks, now I invite the colleagues from the ministry and others, if they want to make any comments, suggestions on the lecture delivered by Mr. Kakar, you are welcome to do so. You can also ask questions. I think if there is nobody else,
No, I have to encourage them.
Yeah, other things.
Let me start the ball rolling. Thank you very much, sir. I think the message that you gave was that this country's future and coal's future are inalienable. In fact, I've heard many industrialists say that India has one natural resource, fuel, in abundance, और हम उसी को abandon करने में लगे हुए हैं. ऑयल और गैस तो है नहीं इस देश में, न्यूक्लियर फ्यूल भी नहीं है. तो अब ये कुडानकुलम वगैरह के जो लगे हुए थे, ये रशिया की वजह से इनका क्या होगा. इस समय सर कोल की क्राइसिस की ये स्थिति है कि yesterday NTPC chairman told me जो सर 26,000 मेगावाट गैस बेस्ड पावर प्लांट्स हैं, उसमें से आई थिंक 9 या 10,000. हम लोग सर जितनी बातें करते हैं एनर्जी डिमांड सप्लाई की, उसमें सर सप्लाई की ज़्यादा करते हैं. वी कीप टॉकिंग कि रिन्यूएबल्स, जैसे आपने भी अपने डिलीवरी में कहा कि द पास्ट एवरेज इज अबाउट 12,000 megawatts of renewable per year, and it has to go up to somewhere 60,000. This is supply side, sir. In coal also we keep talking 1 million ton, etc., etc. On the demand side, we really don't have any fix. Now India's per capita electricity consumption must be around 1100 kilowatt hour per person. I think we do about 1,500 billion units and we have a population of 1.3. 1100-1200 kilowatt units है.
Now touched
1200 सही. तो अब ये है सर कि जो ग्लोबल एवरेज है वो 3000 है, अमेरिका की 11,000 है, चाइना की शायद 5 या 6,000 है. सो इन नीति आयोग व्हेन वी डिड मॉडलिंग इन द प्लानिंग कमीशन टाइम, तो हम लोगों ने कहा कि हम लोग नया एनर्जी सिस्टम बना रहे हैं. बहुत सारे घरों में बल्ब नहीं थे, हमने एलईडी के लगा दिए. जो अब नई वॉशिंग मशीन आएंगी, फ्रिज आएंगी, गाड़ियाँ आएंगी, सब ग्लोबल एनर्जी एफिशिएंट स्केल से आएंगी. तो हम लोगों ने प्रोजेक्शन ये किया था कि हम लोग शायद ग्लोबल एवरेज से थोड़ा नीचे ही रहेंगे, 2700-2800 पे रहेंगे. When the नीति आयोग came into existence, then the senior team which came, उन्होंने कहा अरे आप लोग इंडिया को 2030 में 2040 में ग्लोबल एवरेज से भी नीचे रखोगे, क्या इंडिया कभी डेवलप नहीं होगा. तो वी ट्राई टू टेल देम दैट हम एनर्जी डिवाइसेस की एफिशिएंसी की बात कर रहे हैं, एनर्जी की सर्विस की डिलीवरी की बात नहीं कर रहे हैं. एवरीबडी विल हैव एयर कंडीशनिंग. अभी एयर कंडीशनर 1.5 किलोवाट का है, शायद 900-950 उसका वाट का आ जाए. तो I wanted you to reflect, since you have straddled across petroleum, power and everywhere, what is the likely stability in electricity demand per capita maybe by 2040? Number two, I wanted to ask you about pricing, because you touched, I'm thankful to you, you touched upon pricing, which is a difficult chapter. So you mentioned that in petroleum we remove the distinction between crude price, हम लोग imported ONGC को भी वही भाव देते हैं जो इंटरनेशनल प्राइस होती है ब्रेंट वगैरह की, इंडियन बास्केट वगैरह बनाते हैं. Now पेट्रोलियम में, अच्छा कोल में you mentioned that the international pricing should also be factored in, though you did not clearly say कि इंडियन कोल के लिए इंटरनेशनल प्राइस दी जाए. बट सर ऑयल में और कोल में फ़र्क है. ऑयल हम लोग मुश्किल से शायद 15-17% अपना पैदा करते हैं, 83 इंपोर्ट करते हैं. तो 13% के बेस पे भाव बनाएं कि 87 के परसेंट, आई थिंक 87 के परसेंट पे ही बनाना पड़ेगा, बिकॉज यू कांट हैव 13% सपोर्टिंग 100%. बट इन द केस ऑफ कोल, दैट इज़ नॉट द केस. थर्मल कोल कम से कम हम पूरा बना लेंगे. कोकिंग कोल हो सकता है सर, कोल में फिर दो तरह की प्राइसिंग रिजीम हो, कोकिंग के लिए अलग हो. थम सो आई वांटेड योर व्यूज़ ऑन दैट. एंड प्राइस पे ही जुड़ी हुई बात है. आई वांटेड यू टू गिव अस योर व्यूज़ कि आने वाले समय में जब ये क्लाइमेट चेंज का प्रेशर बढ़ेगा तो क्या कोल की जो इंटरनेशनल प्राइसिंग है वो नीचे आएगी कि ऊपर जाएगी? बिकॉज सम पीपल से दैट जैसे यूरोप में अगर कोई सामान, वो क्या क्रॉस बॉर्डर एडजस्टमेंट मैकेनिज्म, आई थिंक CBAM आया है कि अगर कोई चीज़ आप यूरोप को एक्सपोर्ट करोगे और उसको बनाने में अगर कोयले की बिजली लगी होगी तो कोई ड्यूटी लगा देंगे वो. सो विल दी डिमांड ऑफ कोल कम डाउन? अगर कोल की डिमांड कम आती है तो इंडोनेशिया जैसे देश जो कि कोयले की इकोनॉमी पे ही डिपेंडेंट है, तो वो क्या करेंगे? क्या वो, मतलब वहाँ तो प्रोडक्शन रुकने वाली नहीं है. सो विल द डिमांड सप्लाई गैप और एनी इंटरनेशनल लेवीज विल इम्पैक्ट इंटरनेशनल कोल प्राइसेस? सो दिस इज व्हाट आई वांटेड टू आस्क. थैंक यू.
Thank you, Anil. ये वाला. Okay, thank you, Anil. There have been a lot of attempts at trying to estimate where electricity demand will go in India. I recall when I was in the Power Ministry in 97-98, we found that the CA had overestimated demand. Actual demand was well short of the predictions. And so we had entrusted this study to Terry. And later on, when Terry did their own estimates, they came very close to CA estimates. So it's a very difficult task to do. But the fact is that coal demand has been growing regularly by an average of 5 to 6%. If you see the table that I presented also, there has been a steady growth in demand, and per capita levels of consumption are also growing. We cannot really compare between India and the Western world because there are a lot of differences in the lifestyle of our people and the people there. And so I think we will always remain well below the Western world and the global average. But demand is certainly going to grow, and whether it grows at 5%, 6%, or it grows at 10%, that is a matter of study and debate. But definitely it is going to continuously grow. Whatever may have been the impact of the various measures for energy efficiency, they have not stopped the electricity demand from growing. The second issue you raised is this very difficult issue of pricing. Now the problem is going to come is that once you start getting the private miners in, how are they going to price their coal? Are they going to benchmark it to CIL and Singareni coalfields prices, the public sector prices? Or are they going to take advantage of the market and price it higher than the market? In coastal areas where there is imported coal, will they benchmark it with reference to international coal? What is the government going to do? Is the government going to try and regulate the coal prices of the private sector? I should imagine that once we've allowed the private sector to come in, we should allow that market to develop. And over a period of time, regardless of the fact of whether our coal is 70 or 80% of our requirement, and in future I hope it becomes 90%, then we have to find a way of ensuring that international price fluctuations are absorbed and they do not distort the domestic prices. To what extent can that be done, and what are the lessons from the oil industry? You very rightly pointed out that in the oil sector, the bulk of our oil supply is imported price, and therefore the gap had to be met by the government. In coal, it is very different. But as we move towards a greater role for the private sector miners, the question of how pricing is to be done is something that we need to consider, and to what extent can these prices be benchmarked either on the prices of the market leader, which is Coal India, or the other benchmark, which is international prices. I presume in the current scenario, because international prices are going very high, people would like to use domestic coal, and there is not enough supply on domestic coal. Now, this problem would not have been there if the prices of the two were similar. But yes, there is a problem there that if we do adopt the international price benchmark, then we would unnecessarily be making the country into a high-cost economy. All I'm saying is that these issues need to be discussed and debated by the government, by the industry, and to find out how this problem is going to be resolved in the future. So ideally, we should have one market, and if, say, the private sector players have a much higher price and Coal India has a much lower price, everybody would want to get linkage from Coal India. So what kind of market structure and market mechanism you're going to have to remove this problem, unless we decide on a common pricing structure for both the public sector and the private sector. This issue, of course, needs a great deal of discussion, both within the coal sector and also with the power sector. They would obviously like the prices to remain as low as possible, no doubt about that.
Thank you, sir.
And of course, the pricing problem also has a link with the problem of railway freight. It has a problem with the cross subsidy that is being borne by the coal sector on transmission. Today, because of the ISTS transmission waiver for renewable energy, the entire burden is being borne by the coal sector. So the price of coal-based electricity is, in any case, distorted today in many ways. So you have to take a look at all these distortions in totality, not just at coal price alone, but the delivered cost of coal-based electricity, since it is coal-based electricity that we are talking about today.
Thank you, sir. I think we have one questioner, Mr. Rakesh Kumar, Chairman, Naiveli Lignite Corporation. Ramesh Bharti also? Yes.
Good
And
afternoon,
then Anandji Prasad, third one.
First of all, thank you so much for a very lucid presentation, very full of information and various aspects you have covered very nicely. Just wanted to touch upon again the pricing part of coal and lignite. Actually, CERC has issued the pricing guidelines last year in the month of September for pricing of coal and lignite, which are the mines which are linked to the power stations. I agree with you that the pricing needs to be examined, especially from the perspective that now our country is going to continue to use coal and funding will be a problem. So I think pricing can be made use of self-sustainable coal sector, aligning with the rise in price in the international market also. That will be very helpful. However, the present structure is definitely not helping in this situation because the regulatory body has kept the prices very low, keeping the common man's affordability of power generation, because most of the coal sector is supplying coal for power generation. And similarly, power sector pricing tariffs are also very much regulated, although they have allowed the surplus power to be traded in the markets. But again, the beneficiaries do not give no objection unless and until they are getting, the cheaper power in the markets. They opt for markets, but by the time prices in the market are down, and if the prices are up, they don't give an NOC and they avail the, competitive prices of the power generating companies only. Just wanted to give my view on this.
I think so. We collect all three, and then you can answer. You must, yeah.
So, and it was an enlightening lecture. Just wanted two clarifications. One was you said there should be single unified price structure. The kind of way the import prices are fluctuating and going up these days, don't you think single price structure will completely hamper the kind of power supply situation that may arise due to high increase of domestic coal prices even in the long term? That is one thing I think one has to take into consideration. And second thing, sir, regarding this not having import prices affect WPI, the kind of price jump that we see this year, I think there will be some impact on WPI because of the prices that may go up in the coal consuming sector of the imported coal, because the prices have really almost quadrupled over last year. And for the last 3-4 years, we have been seeing kind of a constant growth of international prices. But this year, the kind of jump that has taken place, don't you think that WPI might be affected this year comprehensively? Thank you, sir.
Mr. Anandji Prasad? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. They will see, so that they will get the mic. Mr. Anandji Prasad, Project Advisor, Ministry, sir.
Good afternoon, sir. My question is in relation to the option 1, which you mentioned that you need to curtail power consumption, rationing of the resources, sir. I would like to have your views on, actually it's a matter of responsible consumption, that we should be responsible towards the consumption of this energy resources. Some mechanism and your views on this is solicited, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. I think we had Mr. Vinod Kumar Tiwari, Additional Secretary, also. He will ask question.
Okay, I'll take that question.
Sir, thank you for very informative address. Sir, linked to, very often I also keep saying to people that when we say cheaper power, I ask for whom? All state governments are giving free electricity to the poorest people, poor people. Agriculture sector doesn't pay anything. Whose lower price power we are talking about? And what is the percentage of that? And if we encourage it, we are effectively encouraging the subsidy part of it, which is a benefit to the state government and not to the coal mine producer, and not even to the poor people. It's basically the Secretary of Finance of the state government that gets all that benefit. So do you see any reform is needed in power tariff structure also, so that coal miner get a fair price of their produce?
Okay, I'll take up the question. First, the point about the CRC norms and international prices. As far as I know, the CRC norms are only for captive consumption. If you are a generating plant, then your coal price is whatever is given by NLC or Coal India. Those prices are taken, and then the actual fuel cost is determined by the your heat rate for your conventional plant. That is so far as the public sector units are concerned, where there is no competitive bidding. So far as private sector plants are concerned, where there is competitive bidding, there the fuel cost, there is only indexation in case the fuel prices are to go up in future. Of course, in the last, how many years? Last 8-10 years, there has been virtually no fresh bidding for private sector plants. Whatever capacity is coming only through the cost plus old model. But I do hope at some point of time we do start competitive bidding. So there, whatever is the coal price given by your company or Coal India, that will have to be factored in by the people bidding for it. The CRC norms are only, I think, for the captive plants, because without those norms, it is not possible to fix the tariff for those plants. But the larger question of integrating domestic prices with international prices, that is a question which I think we should all start thinking about, because once the private sector comes in and they start pricing, and as far as I know today, there's no regulation on their pricing. They can price wherever they want to, just as you can, just as Coal India can. There is no formal regulation on you. So at that point of time, we will have to think as to how the prices of the private sector and the public sector will coexist, how the domestic prices and the imported prices will coexist. And as I said, when we look at pricing, we'll also have to look at the other burdens that are there on the coal sector. The GST cess of 400 rupees plus the cross subsidy on transmission plus the railway freight. So that is one exercise that we'll have to do. From one point of view, an integrated market where you have just one price, it will do away with all these problems, that the entire pressure will be on allocating the lower priced coal. That pressure will come, and that invariably leads to all kinds of problems, which you can do away with if you have an integrated market. Of course, there are costs of the integrated market that if you simply benchmark it to international prices, you will find that sometimes the domestic price will shoot up as the international price goes up. But hopefully, if the climate change movement is strong enough and coal production and coal consumption comes down, coal prices will also come down, and domestic prices may not be out of sync and out of tune with international prices. So to come to the next question that Avinash had raised on the impact on WPI, I'm just going by the numbers of WPI from April 2020 to December 21. And what you do see is that the WPI has hardly moved. whereas the national coal index has moved up and down. It went down when international prices went down, and even when international prices went down, the WPI did not come down. And when the when the international prices went up, the WPI did not go up. If the WPI is in fact reflecting international prices, it is a very good thing. But we will have to see why we do need two indices in the country. Ideally, the weightage that is given in the national coal index, that weightage should also be adopted in the WPI, so we'll get the same index. But in case there is some defect in the weightage in the NCI system, then that weightage can also be corrected. So it's not that the corrections have to be done on one. All I'm saying is that it does sound a bit odd that the country has two price indices for coal, and which are quite different if you just study over the past how many months, 20 months or so since the NCI was introduced. You will see that this problem is very much there. So far as one coal price is concerned, I just mentioned that from a purely economist point of view, it's a very good thing to have border pricing. But obviously there are a lot of complications. And although the point that Secretary made about oil sector being very different from coal, but I do recollect when initial discussions were happening on oil sector pricing being made uniform, there were a lot of problems there also. But whether that is a good model to follow for coal is certainly an open question, but we must look for it, because multiple markets with multiple prices and multiple supply options can create administrative and political problems. The question raised by Mr. Prasad on this option one, well, all I'm saying is that option one should not be involuntary. Whatever you have to do, you do it voluntarily. By all means, do energy efficiency. But the kind of power shutdowns, power cuts, which are imposed when you don't have enough generation, that creates a lot of problems for not only the domestic sector, but also for industry. I recollect when I was Secretary Food Processing, we had a scheme for cold chains, and we used to give subsidy for cold chain. And in one meeting, we used to have periodic meetings to review the progress of the project. So in one meeting, the project developers all said that, we can't manage with the capital subsidy that you're giving us because there have been extensive power cuts, so we need a diesel subsidy because our diesel consumption is going up far more than what we had anticipated or budgeted for. The only state which said that we don't have this problem is Gujarat. And I'm told that even today, when I asked in Gujarat why you don't have the problem, they say it's very simple, we don't have gensets because electricity never goes in Gujarat. And I'm told that situation is there even today. So if you plan your power, if you organize it properly, it is possible to give 24/7 power, which is the stated objective of the government. But if you don't build enough capacity in the hope that from somewhere this renewable capacity is going to come and all this dirty coal we can shut down, if that happens, wonderful, but we don't see that happening. So we must plan for it. That is the point I was making. Don't make the demand cut involuntary, unplanned, without adequate notice to all the consumers. For short periods of time it may be there, but not over a long period of time. So please do energy efficiency, that's a very good thing. And we've made a lot of progress in energy efficiency over the last 10 years. Star rating system is an excellent system. But despite that, demand is growing, and we have to meet that demand. That is our task. Last point made by Tiwari, that low prices help the state government. Well, that's true. It does help the state government, but it also helped industry and commercial users. Industry and commercial users, the percentage will vary from state to state, but generally it will be at least about 30 to 40%. Because they are the only people who pay the anywhere close to the cost of producing power. Domestic is largely subsidized, except at the higher ends. Agriculture, as you rightly say, they hardly pay anything. Generally, it is a fixed tariff, and even that is not collected. So in agricultural states, that is a very high percentage. But in a place like Delhi, where there's hardly any agricultural load, domestic is very important. But even in a place like Delhi, industry and commercial sectors are not subsidized. So they definitely get the benefit of the lower tariffs if you are able to achieve them.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. We have participants from remotely. So any of you have any questions, may I kindly want to speak? Not here, not here. Those who, remote, we'll let us have the round from the remote. Any of the CMDs, directors who are participating remotely from different parts of the country. Can we have your views or questions or comments? Anyone? Looks like, can they hear us? Yeah. Then I think Anando? Anando is Mr. Director NCL, and Santosh is CCO plus DDG, Ministry of Coal. So
anybody else? Otherwise, we think we can have a final round.
Anyone else? Okay. Oh. Yeah, last one is also there. I think third one, I think. Okay, Madam and Anando and the third. Yeah. Go ahead.
Hello. Thank you, sir, for your wonderful presentation. I am Anindya Sinha, Director Technical Operation from Northern Coalfield Limited. Sir, currently, from last few months, the coal producers are being badly pressurized to produce more and more coal to meet the country's demand due to the conditions grown out internationally. So, just I wanted to know, is this similar amount of pressures are the other industries, other energy producing companies are also facing? For example, hydel or nuclear or others. Every other day, it has been told that, okay, more coal has to be produced, more coal has to be dispatched for the country's security, energy security. So that is my one small queries. And second one, sir, as you know, due to the volatile market, the ingredients or the different consuming items which are used for producing coal, for example, the electricity, the fuels, diesel, and explosives, these all parameters are striking high and high. These costs are increasing on a daily basis. For an example, sir, as because Northern Coalfield, there are so many power plants in the nearby vicinity. These power plants are producing electricity from around 1.5 rupees to around 2.4 rupees per unit. Whereas Northern Coalfield is purchasing the same electricity at around 10.5 to 12 rupees per unit. So as the Coal India or the coal companies are being allowing to use the FSS, that means fuel supply agreement, to the different power producing companies, can it not be possible that the same benefit from the power producing companies have an FSA with the coal companies to supply electricity, supply fuel at a much cheaper rate, at a reduced cost, so that the cost of the coal companies can be managed and it will be used for the betterment of the nation. So, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Hello, sir. My name is Jatin Grover. I'm from Informist Media. My question is related to single e-auction window for coal, which was recently announced. So reports suggest that many industry or coal consumers, we can say it a confusion or their concerns related to, like, they'll have to compete with traders now, and now the price for procuring the coal, so that they'll have to pay a premium over that. So I just wanted to know how this mechanism will work and whether their concerns are right or not, whether they'll have to compete with traders and will they have to pay a premium for procuring coal or not? So that's my question.
Yeah, so I'll first take Santosh's question. Yeah, it was quite some time since we designed this NCI, and I did miss the point that the WPI, in fact, doesn't factor in imported prices at all, and whereas the NCI does. So that is one big difference. And there is no reason why the WPI should not factor in imports. That will be one way in which the two indices will move closer. And whatever are the other methodologies in NCI, we need to examine that and see if the two can be merged. Your second question was on lignite. I have not studied the lignite sector. I'm not that familiar. But if there is not much import of lignite, which I understand there isn't, then there is very little advantage in developing a separate NCI for lignite. The main reason why we took the decision that we should have an NCI is because of the imported component. Of course, we included e-auctions also there, but then e-auctions are a very small, they have a very small weight in the index. So if you are not importing much of lignite, then there is very little advantage in developing a NCI. Then the WPI itself may be a very good proxy and can be used for indexing the revenue share mechanism. That is my response to your question. So far as the question raised by Anando is concerned, I can sympathize with you, the pressures that are being brought upon you.
He's called it bad pressure. Bad pressure. Lot of bad pressure.
So I'm sure the Power Ministry must be putting pressures on everybody else, but each sector has its own problems. If there isn't sufficient rainfall, there isn't sufficient storage, then hydro generation will obviously come down. Nuclear has its own problems, and then in any case, nuclear is a very, very small percentage of our generation. It's not even in double digits. Hydro at least is close to double digits, if not in double digits. And similarly, there's a lot of pressure on the renewable energy industry, no doubt, and on the ministry to produce more power from renewables. In the short run, it's very little that they can do. So the problem with coal is that you're too big. So you're the biggest player. So no doubt the bulk of the pressure will come on you. The second issue you raised was on the cost of power, the differences. Well, one will have to go into that in some detail. But as you know, all these retail prices are fixed by the state regulators based on the data that is given to them by the state generating companies and distribution companies. And of course, they do have a consultation process. So one can only say that you have to impress upon the regulators what are your problems. The last question is the question raised by Jatin. Yes, I presume that once e-auction is introduced in an integrated manner where all players compete, then the captive users will have to compete with traders. That's the whole purpose of creating an integrated market. Now, whether that will mean that the prices will go up or they won't go up, that we have to see. But the problem is that if you do have different segments, I mean, from an administrator's viewpoint, that is the same reason why we all advocate unified markets, unified pricing, is because if you have these individual buckets, then there is room for a lot of mischief and a lot of problems that may arise out of somebody taking the supply for one purpose and using it for another. So the best is to have a uniform market with uniform prices. But I don't know if Secretary would like to comment on this.
You know, if this unification was being accompanied by scarcity of coal, then it becomes an explosive combination. But since the supply is also, poised to increase with commercial mining, captive, 50% sale provisions, so then that fear is unfounded. And the share of the traders we found out very small in the overall auction regime.
I think we can conclude. I just wanted to make a comment on one of your small bullet you mentioned. We can give up coal. But actually, I thought the choice between giving up coal or capturing the harmful effects of burning of coal, they are the two choices. I think we should also keep that in mind. And my sense is we should also spend a lot of money on technologies that captures these emissions, harmful emissions. Then, as long as there are no harmful emissions, it doesn't matter coal. You produce, you use the coal, you develop the country, no harm done. I think so. Anyway, I just wanted to make this comment. So I thank and I think formal. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much for this enlightening discussion. एंड आप सभी को बता दें कि एक अनाउंसमेंट है कि एक बार फिर आपको बता दें कि एक ब्लड डोनेशन वैन इस परिसर में मौजूद है और अगर कोई रक्तदान करना चाहे तो वैन तक जाकर यहाँ ब्लड डोनेशन कर सकते हैं और ये 2:30 बजे तक ही यहाँ मौजूद रहेगी। उसके बाद ये दूसरी लोकेशन पर मूव करेगी। और बिफोर आई रिक्वेस्ट जॉइंट सेक्रेटरी बिस्मिता तेज टू प्रपोज वोट ऑफ थैंक्स, एक बार फिर आपको याद दिला दें कुछ लाइंस है जो बार बार हम इस कार्यक्रम के दौरान दोहरा रहे हैं। पहुंचाया कोयला, किया करोड़ों घरों को रोशन, उद्योगों, नौकरियों और सुदूर लोगों का जीवन हुआ गुलशन। हुई सरल अनेकों खनन प्रक्रिया, कोरोना के खिलाफ लड़ाई में देशवासियों ने कहा शुक्रिया। बनाया कोयला खनन का नया कीर्तिमान, आत्मनिर्भर भारत की ओर देश हुआ गतिमान। तो अब मैं निवेदन करूंगी विस्मिता तेज, जॉइंट सेक्रेटरी, टू काइंडली प्रपोज वोट ऑफ थैंक्स।
Finally, the Ministry of Coal has kick-started the iconic week under the aegis of Azadi ka Amrit Mahotsav. I express my heartfelt gratitude and thanks to Honorable Minister of Coal, Mines and Parliamentary Affairs, Shri Prahlad Joshi sir, for taking time out of his extremely busy schedule to bless us virtually. Sir, thank you for your valuable message. I express my heartfelt gratitude and thanks to Honorable Minister of State for Coal, Mines and Railways for taking out time from his busy schedule to be with us and bless us with his wonderful message on the coal sector, encouraging us all the way. I take this opportunity to thank you, sir, Dr. Anil Kumar Jain, our secretary, the head of our coal family, for his erudite opening remarks. Thank you, sir, for being with us and guiding us always. I thank Additional Secretary Vinod Kumar Tiwari, sir, Additional Secretary Mr. Nagaraju, my colleagues and friends from the Ministry of Coal to being present here and making this a grand success. Regarding our technical session, I take this opportunity to thank Shri Rakesh Kakkad, sir, for his insightful and extremely interactive session on the future of coal-based electricity generation in India. Thank you, sir, for being here with us today. I take this opportunity to thank officers who are present from the other ministries and PSUs, the CMDs, the directors of our coal companies, the other members of the coal companies, as well as stakeholders who have joined us virtually, and each one of us who are present here to make this event a grand success. I take this opportunity to thank the press and media and the PIB for their unstinting support to all of us. And I really request, let the story of coal go down to each and every person in this country of ours. For that, we really are thankful to all of you, the press and the media who are present here. I take this opportunity to thank my team, my entire team, led by, I will take his name here because he has worked unstintingly for this success of this program. Mr. Quatra, you and your team for having made this function such a grand success. And I would fail in my duties if I don't thank the NIC team for making all the network connectivity and all possible in this remote location which is away from our office. Thanks once again, everyone, for being present here. And I take this opportunity to invite all of you for the lunch which is in the first floor of this building. Thank you so much. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.